Miss Yarroda Bertie.
Ave Satanas! Hail Satan! Hail Satan! Hail Satan!
Greetings, heathens. Welcome to Hail Satan. This is the podcast exploring Satanism, culture, and life in general through the eyes of modern Satanists. My name is Joseph Rose. I'm a member of an amazing independent congregation called Satanic Delco, and we welcome members from everywhere in the world. If you want to learn a little bit more, visit satanicdelco.com. And speaking of Satanic Delco, we just recently held the Heathen's Choice Awards. We packed a bunch of Satanists from all around the country into a theater out here in Delco, and we had the first ever Satanic Award show. Putting it all together was a lot, let's say, but everyone came together and made it really pretty great. I think everyone had a fun time, and we got to give out 15 awards to some very deserving heathens. So thank you to everyone that came, and special thanks to those of you who helped plan and execute the whole thing. You all did a great job. Today, I'm going to present you with our roundtable discussion focused on Tenet number 3. Before we get to that, let me acknowledge some of the awesome people who have joined recently on Patreon. We've got a bunch of them. We have Osric, Evanora, Kerry, Heather, Shelby, Robbie, Scott, Devin, Audrey, Aaron, Blackula, Michelle, Abigail, Sophia, Jimmy, Alexandra, Andrew, Kat, Camry, Jesselyn, Adam, Raver Gamer, Michael, Yogi, Happy, Gal, Carter, Zach, Carney Jesus, Anathema Black, Janelle, Robert, Jennifer, Valerie, Crystal, Kelso, Angela, Sasha, M, Lucinda, Nick, Betty, David, KEO or KO, Paula, Anomaly, Venom Spidey, and Kylie. Wow. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate your support very much, and I love the way our community has been growing, not only in its size, but all the fun and interesting ways that people are interacting and creating within the group. It's very cool to see. If you have a moment, please visit the website at hailsatanpodcast.com. You'll find links to join me on social media, a form to send an email, and a link to join up with all of us on Patreon. We have a few different tiers to choose from with various benefits. Go take a look. That is the most direct way you can support me and this show if you'd like to do that. So visit hailsatanpodcast.com. All right, let's get into our roundtable discussion of Tenet number 3. A group of us in Satanic Delco gathered on Zoom, like we do, to share our thoughts and opinions of the application of this tenet. Tenet number 3 states, one's body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone. So let's just get right into it. And we've got a hand up from Torgo. Take it away.
This is the one that kind of brought me into TST and Satanism really to begin with. At the time, abortion was a really big deal in Texas. I have a lot of friends, and obviously it still is. I have a lot of friends that live there, and that they were coming out so strong on this was part of the reason I was like, I need to pay attention to these guys. Who are these guys? Look more deeply into it and realized, oh, wait, all 7 tenets speak to me directly. This is awesome. But yeah, this is kind of my gateway.
When was that? Was there one specific thing happening related to TST that sort of drew you in related to this one?
Yeah, there was some kind of lawsuit. I don't know if it just started or if it was still just being talked about. It was either Texas or Florida where they were going after, whatever the policy was at the time. And obviously the policy's gotten even worse since. But the fact that they were taking such a direct line to it and such a respectful and legal direct line to it just impressed the hell out of me. It's like, this is a lot better way to fight this kind of thing than any way I'd seen previous.
Yeah. Yeah, and I bet you there's a whole lot of people in that exact same boat as it relates to becoming aware of or joining the Satanic Temple because of that. They've made a real aggressive campaign with that in a lot of different ways, from like online type stuff to billboards and all around.
I have 2 daughters, and the fact that, some government wants to tell them what they can do with their bodies, I was like, no, fuck that. But let's find another way to do this.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people right there with you. Thank you. We've got Tomoe. Go on.
So I am a victim of sexual abuse. So this was a very important thing for me to see in my early to mid 20s when I found the tenets. Also at the time for me personally, I was a drunk. I was making bad choices for my body. So for me, it not only covers bodily autonomy, like in reference to how others treat you, it covers it for yourself. I was making bad decisions. And I wasn't doing right by myself. And this one kind of hooked me, not just because of the sexual abuse, but because I was abusing me. And I don't deserve that. I don't deserve that. And not just anyone else in here. Like she said, other religions usually have like shitty, subservient bullshit put into it, and this one doesn't. So that immediately hooked me. Also, I had a recent run-in with someone at work where they tried to tell me that my tattoos are an affront to God and that no man would ever want me.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm an affront to God because I have tattoos, which I verbally responded to her. My body is my own, subject to my own will, not yours, not your God's. No, I am a Satanist. And by the way, I have a tattooed girlfriend who adores me. Bye. So that's Athena's and my take.
I can hardly imagine somebody fucking just having the balls. Just to suggest such a thing to someone.
Yeah, to anyone, but especially me.
Yeah, that is ridiculous.
Even worse, I'm this person's supervisor. Like, no, honey.
Earlier,
it's intense.
For a while, to me, when I thought of this tenet, the most obvious thing that came to mind was something like sexual abuse, something like that. That seemed like the obvious one, like someone else can't violate my body against my will. That was the no-brainer.
It seems like this was crafted for that specifically.
Yeah, but it seems like over time now, that one is so directly connected to the abortion stuff.
Yes.
That seems to be the one, or, the angle that most people approach that one with, or the one that comes to mind. Obviously, just because of all the attention that is paid to that subject by the Satanic Temple.
Yes, they're really going hard on like the emails and stuff about that lately too.
Yes.
It's getting intense.
Yeah, that's really become the one. That's been their number one focus for whatever reason.
It's an important fight. So I understand.
Absolutely, it is. It is. Thank you, T. Casket, go ahead. You're next.
So just kind of along the same vein as what we've already been talking about. Actually, a situation just last night made me think of this. For the 1,000th time, going to shows, metal shows, punk shows, some dude just grabbed onto me and was just drunk and wasted and thinking he was having a good time and being cute and trying to be flirty. And I'm just trying to fucking enjoy my show and like headbang and shit and like, watch Running Christ. But no, this fucking dude has to grab up on me. But it just makes me think that, this tenet is a really good reminder at, making yourself just know that your body is your own. No one has any entitlement to come in contact with your body in any way that you do not approve of. And that can change at any given time. And the other thing is that you can also use your body in any way that you see fit to defend yourself. And I think to me, that is really important because sometimes you have to, push people away or, say certain things or, you have to physically do something to, make that point known that, hey, don't touch me or, whatever. So I like to think of that being able to use my body in any way that I see fit to defend that tenet as well.
For sure. Yeah, that's a good point. And I think most of us, it's safe to say that we're not looking forward to a situation like that. Most of us, on a good day when we're being the people that we want to be, we're not looking for a reason to have to defend ourselves, because look, those people exist. And sometimes, maybe those people are us, on a not great day. Maybe we'll get to that tenet eventually, but people are fallible. And yeah, we could have a day like that, but we hope we don't. And so, yeah, it's an unfortunate reality, but yeah, sometimes that's an option. You do have to protect yourself. And we have to have the right to reasonably defend ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think we do, but it's a bummer, I guess, when it has to come to that.
Yeah.
For so many reasons. Now, Casket, when you described this incident at the show, was this guy just like an invasion of personal space? It wasn't anything specific, or was he just like generally gripping up on you and being all up in your area?
Yeah, I mean, going to shows, it's always an invasion of personal space, right? I mean, you're in a crowded space with a lot of strangers. Yeah. So you're going to get bumped into, you're going to get elbows in the face. I mean, I'm 4'11", so I'm right at like elbow height, right? So,
yeah. I had no idea.
Are you? Yeah.
I did not know.
So it's kind of lame, but like, whatever, I deal with it. But yeah, so that also being really small, I think, these really, drunk guys, whatever, they look down and they go, oh, she's small and cute. Right. I bet she wants to be picked up, or I bet she needs my arms around her right now. And it's like, oh, fuck no, I don't. Yeah. But yeah, so, it is what it is, but I'm also kind of tired of saying that, because I think that it should just not be a thing anymore, but it's going to take a long time before that happens.
And if you were to guess, I'm sure, it varies person to person, but if you had to guess, Casket, if somebody took that guy aside and said, hey man, what were you doing there? What's up with that? Do you think his mindset was that, oh man, I was just trying to have fun. We're just having fun. Mm-hmm. Like, that's probably not in all cases. Some people are going to just be a fucking asshole because they are in the mood or drunk or whatever it might be. But I think a fair amount of the time there's going to be that guy who just is genuinely ignorant.
Yeah.
To the idea.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's probably like 60% of the time.
Yeah.
There's definitely a lot of predatory men, that end up, coming to these shows and stuff. And
yes.
Whatever. I mean, they're everywhere, but I think a lot of it is just sheer, they're just drunk and they're having a good time.
Yeah. Just an ignorance to how someone else might be feeling.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah. Thank you, Casket.
Yeah.
Who's up next? Rain.
Growing up heavily influenced by a Christian family, you learn that your body is not your own. Like, it does not belong to you. It belongs to God. And that's like really hammered into you and through everything you do. And so like everything that you want to do with your body, you have to like check in to make sure that it's right with like Jesus or something like that. And I don't know, growing up, that really frustrated the hell out of me. Especially being a transgender man. I was like, Mom, this is like, you need to understand, I am not trying to be an affront to your God right now. This is just me. And it's also knowing that this creator that is supposed to be loving towards everything hates you because you are told that God created you and your body belongs to him and your body was made perfectly. So there's a mishap of an alignment there. And I don't know, that was something that I was thinking about, because with this tenet, it means a lot to me to know that my body belongs to me.
Would you be able to share any specific examples of what you mean by under that faith or that experience you've had? In what kind of ways does it show itself when you say, your body doesn't belong to you, your body belongs to God or whatever? For
sure. I remember actually when I first told my parents that I was going on testosterone, and that was awful. But I remember a lot of what I heard from my mother was that the way that you were created before, because there's this whole idea that you're created before you're even born, or that God knows you or something like that, is meant to stay that way and meant to only be that way. And that caused a lot of distress within my family because I was changing the way that I had come into the world originally.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You're taking God's plan, God's creation, which was perfect, and now you're fucking it up.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's, even by that point in your case, I can only imagine by that point you weren't a believer in that God.
No, and it's a thing where I try to respect my parents' beliefs because it's real to them. And so therefore I acknowledge it as a real thing for them. But it's also just very hard because I think that the older I get and the more I learn about religion, the more I think that the idea of God is pretty ridiculous. And that's just me currently right now. And so it's hard to be told by people that the reason why they don't respect you and your decisions of your body are because they believe in something that sounds pretty unbelievable to you, and you're able to respect that.
Yes. So, man, I run into that one a lot where we respect everyone's religion. We talk so much about religious freedom, religious equality, plurality, all of these things. And we want everyone to have their religion because we want to have ours, right? And so that's the way it works. But you might come across a perfectly reasonable, intelligent adult in any area of your life, and then they tell you they essentially believe in the equivalent of the fucking Easter Bunny. And yet you have to continue on respecting this person and respecting their intelligence, and you have to somehow compartmentalize the fact that this person might be in charge of a business or a child or have a wife. They're on the roads, and they believe in more or less the fucking Easter Bunny or something equivalent to a Santa Claus or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. Sorry, I got dragged off track on that one because it does really fucking get me all the time. I'm like, how are you a fully formed adult human? And this is where we've landed.
Yeah.
But yeah, Rain, I understand that tremendous pressure that probably puts on someone in your position to be respectful and appease your family and all of that. But meanwhile, you've got these real genuine feelings that you have to act on. And they're trying to control you and your body through some sort of superstitious religious pressure. And that's fucking annoying.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for sharing all that, Rain. Who's up? Rob, you're up.
One thing that I really like about the third tenet is it's like a grammatical sense, not to be a grammarian, but, one's body is inviolable, subject to what, one's will alone. It's, one in the sense of everyone. So it's almost like this golden rule, like reciprocity, which goes back to the sexual assault, that we talked about earlier. Don't do anything to someone that they are not consenting to because their body is inviolable, just as you want your own body to be inviolable. But I also think, the Satanic Temple, it's an activist organization. So it's really applicable beyond just like your own individualness. But it's really, it's a response to, first thing we talked about, abortion, the Texas abortion movement, Texas abortion outlawing movement, because it's really a response to the Christian nationalist creep, that's just trying to police uteruses, and the Christian nationalists attempt to do, take away people's autonomy for their own gender identity and their own sexuality. I was also raised in a very Christian household, and you think, I think there's like the illusion of Corinthians, the book of Corinthians, 1 Corinthians chapter 6, when your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. It's not yours. Literally, it's like your body is not yours, according to like the Christian national spirit. So it's when writing the tenets, it's like, let's address this bullshit that your body is not yours. Your body is yours. Everyone's body is theirs. Don't do anything to somebody that you don't feel comfortable doing to you, which ironically is like essentially the golden rule, which is, something else that's in the New Testament that Christians so often don't really abide by.
It's a legit angle. No question. Who's up? Greg.
I got a few things. First of all, as far as the control issue, from most religions, it's usually control of women in particular, and that has got to stop. As far as reproductive rights, as far as what they could do, what they can't do. It's usually targeted towards women. Another thing another minor one is being forced to do something, like something as simple as maybe going to a baseball game and having to stand for some special song and being forced to do so by people around you.
Oh, yes. You're talking like that falls into like the societal pressure type.
Right. Yeah. Especially when it's a hymn, God Bless America.
Sure.
It's not even a national anthem, although I have problems with standing for that too.
That's right, Greg.
And then, and being forced to do anything by anyone. And another one away from that is, especially for older, sicker people, the right to be able to end one's life on their own terms.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think about it, Greg? You're a believer in the right to die, I guess. Is that how we categorize it?
Assisted suicide. If you have some kind of terminal disease, you're going to die. Why be forced to suffer through the pain and agony?
Well, look, I'm damn near certain that I'm going to die. I'm fucking sure of it.
Yeah, it's 100%.
And so yeah.
Nobody gets out alive.
That's true. And so do you feel like there are certain requirements or specifics that have to be in place for one to be able to make that choice?
If you're living a life of nothing but pain.
I'm saying, what if you're not? I'm saying, what if you're fine? What if you're just chilling? What if you're 27 years old and you can do 27 pull-ups and you got a decent job and your girlfriend's cute, but you're just not feeling it anymore?
Well, it is still your body.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just interested in some people's takes on such a thing. I mean, I talked about it a bit on, I don't know, I feel like some recent podcast. I don't remember how it came up, but yeah, I've always been a believer in the general right to die type of vibe. I was a fan of what Jack Kevorkian was doing back in the day. If any of you guys are old enough to remember him, but it's a controversial one. I mean, of course it is. It involves life and death. And so people are going to have feelings about it. It's intense.
Yeah. But that doesn't, you're stuck with me for a long time, so don't worry about me.
Good. I'm glad. I want to keep you around, Greg. Cool. Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Greg. Go ahead, Torgo.
People are already kind of using this tenet to justify not getting the vaccines. And how do we feel about that? And how do we deal with that when we have people come tell us, hey, I'm not getting the vaccine because, like you said, one's body is invaluable. Like, you're not wrong.
That's right. Yeah. How do you feel about it?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, I think if we really want to stay with the 7 tenets, and this is one of them, we kind of have to support that, right? I mean, at least on some level. Obviously, there's a whole scientific element to this, and that comes in other tenets. But
yes.
If you really feel strongly like, maybe I have some immunodeficiency type problems, and this vaccine might be a problem for me, I can't make you get one. It's
I don't even think like for the purposes of the fundamentals of the discussion, I don't think we even need to make any justification or qualifications for any of these choices. Like Greg had mentioned something like assisted suicide, for example, like if you have a terminal disease, if you're in pain all the time, if life sucks. I'm saying, so what? What if none of that is true? If our body is inviolable and our own will alone is the only one that matters, then none of these qualifications are required. I mean, they're requiring your own head to justify what you want to do, but that's up to you. That's your individual choice. Yeah. These external requirements usually come from somewhere, like in that actual case of assisted suicide. Like in the world we live in today, there are places that do have some form of assisted suicide as an actual legal option, and the requirements to be part of that are, fairly specific. You do have to have some sort of disease, and doctors had to have given you a certain prognosis. Okay, you're not going to recover from this. Your condition isn't going to get better. You are likely to live out the rest of your days in discomfort or whatever it is. And those are the requirements that have to be met.
This is why I have my own cliff face. And if I take that step, it's my choice.
That's right. Yeah. If it were up to me, and I'm saying this, and I don't know if it would exactly be true if I were able to, give it more thought. But I think if I were in charge, I would allow the option of a medically assisted suicide to a whole hell of a lot more people than it's available to today. I just think so. I'm sure I've ranted about it on another thing, so I won't do it again. But thank you, Torgo. But go ahead, Carrie.
I have a few things, and they're not really deep thoughts on anything, but just like shallow kind of considerations, like children, because, there's some issues there with parents that don't want to get their children, not just vaccines, but vaccines at all,
Yeah.
Or medical treatment, even for people who are whatever religion that is that doesn't believe in, medical treatment for some things. They have the right to decide that for their children, but at what point? Like some of the kids at least are old enough to understand that and to not like their decision, and that's kind of an issue. I feel like that hasn't really, it's hard to address because you don't want to take, you don't want to put that power anywhere else, like with the state, obviously.
Sure.
But like, what's the balance between the kids' wishes and the parents' wishes for the kids? What should it be? Should it be when you turn 18, it ends?
Yeah, that is a real good point of discussion through all of this. When we, in Satanic Delco, and I'm sure many other places, all of us get into discussions about the tenets. And when we talk about this one, that's inevitably a part of it that comes up. Doing things for your child, having them vaccinated, having them circumcised. That's one that has been discussed quite a bit. Having all kinds of things, when your child is a child from birth up through whatever age, a parent's job is to make decisions for that child. And I guess if you really want to get down to the nitty gritty of it, that's, I don't know, some might find those choices controversial as it relates to this tenet. But of course it's complicated because you are the parent of that child. But go ahead, Carrie. I didn't want to cut you off there.
Oh, no, you're fine. The other thing I have is, what about your corpse? Like, is this still apply here? Can you decide, like, I want to be composted and then expect people to have to carry that out? Or is that ridiculous and it's up to them because you're dead and it doesn't matter anymore?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
What do you think?
I think kind of that you can't control what people do when you're gone. So it's kind of up in the air, Yeah. I would like them to do what I would like, but if they don't, I'm not going to know. I'm not going to care.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter all that much,
That really is the only answer, right? We all want what we want to happen. I hope whatever I wrote down or told my friends or whatever, I hope that comes true for whatever reason, like, not that it will fucking matter, because again, I'll be dead.
Right.
But if it doesn't happen,
this applies there. These tenets apply to living people, I would say, not dead people so much. But and the other thing is being drafted, because you can be drafted and be forced to maybe die in a war or fight in a war at least, or whatever they make you do. And that's legal and everything. But a lot of people object to going to war or, being in the military. So
yeah, of course.
There's that too.
Are there places that still have an active draft in the traditional sense?
I think so. But
Israel, you're pretty much
Israel.
If you're if you're old enough, you're in the military for at least 2 years.
Oh yeah, you know what?
Yeah,
that's
you
right.
have to go for at least 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah, and
South
you
Korea,
know what? That's right. Yeah, I was
South
just going to
Korea.
say in Korea, I know for a fact that they have some of that. They have sort of a
Actually, Switzerland too. A friend of mine's Swiss, and he had to do the same thing.
yeah.
South Korea may be changing that because a member of BTS is trying to get out of it. So, boy bands rule everything.
Oh, well then, yeah, we better fix that. All right, yeah, a lot of good points. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you for sharing. Chris, you're next.
I was gonna comment in regards to, like, when it comes to health issues, like a vaccine or stuff like that.
Just a heads up for you. Your audio is horrendous. Just so you know,
Oh,
your connection is terrible.
there.
Oh, it's even worse now. You're a full-blown auto-tune robot. I feel what Chris is saying. Your choice is yours. If you don't want to do a thing, then you don't have to. But what about when that thing starts to affect other people? But using the example that Chris made, and, we're talking basically about COVID and the vaccines and everything, right? I think if you go to those people that are saying, I don't want to be vaccinated, there's plenty of reasons that people could have, right? And I think if you talked to those people, we might all disagree, but those people wouldn't think that they are lacking compassion and empathy. They've probably considered it. They've heard what we've all heard. They've heard the news. They've read the internet, whatever. And the conclusion that they came to, however it is that they did, is that it's not necessary, it's not helpful, it's not true, or it's not whatever thing that would motivate a lot of people to get it that didn't motivate them. So they wouldn't say, oh yeah, I don't have compassion for my grandma, I don't give a fuck. They wouldn't say that. They'd be like, yeah, I love my grandma, I wouldn't want to make her sick, but I don't think I am. I don't think I'm putting her at risk, or insert whatever reason or excuse here. So it's more complicated. It'd be so easy if we could just, if compassion and empathy were just the universal answer. But the problem is lots of people, most people probably have compassion and empathy, or at least feel that they do. But that doesn't change the extent of the thought process that leads to their final actions.
Yes, that is actually kind of what I was going to touch on.
Go on till you're up.
Yes, we as Satanists know that our tenets work together. And I was going to bring the first one back with compassion and empathy, but also the fifth one as well, because off the top of my head, the initial part of that is one's beliefs should conform to their best scientific understanding of the world. That is very specifically worded because one's best understanding, your best understanding, is not my best understanding. Just like my best understanding is not the woman who told me that I'm an affront to God for having tattoos, which that same woman, by the way, to bring her up again, is not only anti-vax for herself, which as much as I disagree with that, I'm okay with, because that is your body and that is your choice to make. She is anti-vax for other people. This bitch is out here like protesting this. And that is something that I don't feel is okay personally for me. I feel like you are trying to make the choice for somebody else, and that's not okay.
Do you suspect, this comes up a lot when we talk about, religious people. Imagine a religious, your average overly Christian lady at the supermarket, oh, have a blessed day. Bless you. Any of these sayings that they say, they're saying it, I assume, or I want to believe,
of the kindness of their heart.
Yeah, because they're being nice, they're trying to be helpful, they're trying to do the right thing. So do you imagine that this lady is out there being anti-vax for everyone because she wants to help it? She wants to save everybody. She wants to save everybody from this poison.
Yes. She went into some weird rabbit hole about how there's a microchip in there and the government's gonna follow you, and we don't need that. Even though she has a cell phone, I've seen it. It's on her at all times. If the government wanted to follow you, bitch, that's how they're gonna do it.
Yeah, and that's an example of a woman clearly using compassion and empathy.
Yes,
to tell you should not be vaccinated. And she really believes that.
She really believes it.
Yeah.
As much as I dislike that, I can use my brain and kind of see where she's coming from. So I'm using compassion and empathy. As much as I disagree with it, I will actively, verbally tell her that I absolutely disagree with that and that it's inappropriate to be speaking to me about this at work, she can still have those opinions.
Yeah.
She's allowed.
Yeah, it's so complicated, right? Like whenever we talk about the tenets, we talk about every different angle of like human bullshit. And
we talk ourselves into a circle.
Yeah, it's so complicated.
That's what they're designed to do.
Yeah, everybody is so fucking complicated. This lady is out there doing the right thing for herself. She's trying to be nice. Well, yeah. Right is subjective, of course. But she thinks she's doing the right thing. She's trying to use compassion and empathy. She's trying to save the people, man. She's just trying to be nice, damn it. But here we are. All right. Was that all for you right there, T?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Betty, you're next.
I just wanted to add, somebody was asking about your rights at death. There's a hierarchy that's in place. So unless you have gone out of the way to secure a lawyer and somebody who is responsible for you after death and basically funded the entire thing by yourself, despite your next of kin, they can present you any way they want. As a death doula, I've seen it happen. It's horrific. It upsets me. But unfortunately, people don't think about death, and they don't think about what happens at death or how they'll be presented.
Probably not a lot of people have a very detailed plan in place.
No. And unfortunately, because they don't, those rights go to next of kin. And there's a hierarchy. You'd have to look at your local laws to see what your hierarchy is, but it's generally fairly standard, unless you have something put in place legally. So anybody who is especially identifying differently than they were born, and for whatever reason, I don't want to say it's just one thing or one other. Like, I mean, if you're a Satanist, if you're a witch, if you're whatever, it doesn't matter. You need to put this shit in place, because otherwise nobody's going to protect your rights because they can't. I have seen people misrepresented in death, and it's horrific.
Yeah.
If that's something that you value at death, the only way to ensure it is by getting a lawyer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a intensely sort of personal thing, and it's very natural for any of us to want to care about that. Most of us, I imagine, have probably had some thought about, this is what I want to happen when I die. And if somebody said to you, well, that's not going to fucking happen. You can't have that. That would be annoying and shitty, right? You kind of care. But if you really think about it, you're dead. You're not going to care. You're not going to know. It's never going to matter to you.
To you, it may not, but maybe to your community, it would. And
yes.
I'm talking about people who maybe the trans community and things like that. That's where it fucking matters.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I was kind of thinking of as you were talking about all that.
That's where it's really devastating.
Yeah. That is strange,
because I've seen haircut and makeup removed and dressed in a suit.
Yes, someone is born and grew up with their family, let's say as a man. They transitioned a little later in life. They lived as a woman for X amount of time, and they pass away, and then the rights go back to next of kin, and the next of kin doesn't accept their transition and says, no, we're going to bury Brian here as a man. And
then the partner of that person is devastated. It's devastating.
Yeah.
So just please get a lawyer.
Yeah.
I know it's expensive. I get that it's expensive, but I mean, if you're in that situation, don't do that to your loved ones. Just don't, please.
Thank you, Betty. That is interesting and a good point to remember. What do we got? Frankie, what's happening?
So I'm just going to reiterate this tenet. One's body is inviolable and subject to one's will alone, period. There is no subjective manner of this tenet whatsoever. Okay, it is what it is. And in saying that, this is the one tenet that brought me into Satanism for that reason. I grew up Catholic school. My body was not in my rights. So it was always a struggle to kind of, we weren't even allowed to paint our nails in school. It's insanity, right? So it was always a struggle to be expressive in myself and, kind of deal with that. But when I learned about Satanism, I got more into myself and my rights and advocating for myself. With that also, touching back on the mandates, vaccination mandates, I think with an exception of the COVID mandate, vaccination mandates are probably generally fine. We've also had those types of mandates for decades. Okay. Yeah. Measles, polio, we've had that for decades. It works. We know it's good. So with the COVID vaccine, the reason why it shouldn't be mandated, brand new, we were basically just test subjects. And I can say I'm one of the few who were directly affected by it. I have a heart condition. It happened 4 weeks after I was vaccinated, was in the ER twice, reached out to Johnson & Johnson, no answers. Nobody has any idea why this happened. Nobody wants to explain why it happened right after my vaccine either. And it's just kind of one of those things where people look at me like, oh, well, you're the 1%. Too bad, right? So many people died that like your experience doesn't matter. So to me, it fucking makes me infuriated when people are for the mandates and things like that. Because the only reason I had to get the vaccine was to keep a job because I was working in Philadelphia at the time, which 2 weeks or three, let's say three, wasn't even mandated. Yeah. And why is that? Because people are quitting or people are getting sicker from it. And like there's just complications with it being mandated. It's a vaccine that was fabricated by multiple companies. It's fabricated differently. And just nobody knew anything about it. And we're just like, nope, you have to do this to keep your job. Like what? Absolutely not. That's bullshit. And here I am 6 months out. I got vaccinated October 21 and I still have a heart condition that I have no idea will go away. I don't even know what I can and cannot do. To me, I get very infuriated when people are for things like that and advocate for that because it's absolute bullshit. I mask up, I keep my social distance. And, when all of that was peak, you don't see family, you don't see friends. I didn't even see family during Christmas because I thought somebody was exposed. Like it's, you be responsible. Yeah. And I'm sorry that a lot of people couldn't be trusted to be responsible, but that's also not my fault either, because I know what I was doing to keep myself and my family and my loved ones safe. And then I, trusted the science, got vaccinated, and here we are. Something that I definitely didn't want to do. And I did try to do the religious exemption, and I was denied by a community member and also my job for it. So it really fucking threw me for a loop on both ends. Yeah. Because I was basically denied as a Satanist from Satanists. And then going into my job, they basically were like, what is that? What is a Satanist? So it was like a whole thing. So that is a little bit of how I feel about the mandate for COVID vaccines, only COVID though. Other than that, what I would really like to say about this Tenet is that I absolutely adore it. And I think it's definitely the most important to me, but definitely doesn't have any status over the others because they obviously all intertwine together. But This one to me is very deep rooted because, I'm 4'9". I was 85 pounds my whole life, like growing up. So, I was always, you're too skinny, you're small, were you born premature? Like just all these crazy things. And like, sometimes it's cute. Sometimes it's just like, dude, get over yourself. Like I'm small, relax. So just being like a small female my whole life and then becoming a mom, I definitely fell in love with this Tenet. Like this has a lot of power around it. And this is definitely one that I invoke on a daily basis, especially now that I am a Satanist and can express myself more freely, especially with the bodily autonomy that I hold myself to.
Well, fucking A, Frank. I think you've said it. Coming
I
in.
got a little excited there, but
Frankie just came in strong.
That nailed it. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I'm not about to argue with her.
You could try. You could try.
I'm feeling a little scared. I feel you for sure, Frank, and you're justified in your feelings. Whether or not any of us disagree. I mean, we're all going to disagree on some shit, right? Like we know that, but I think you're clear in why you feel the way you feel, and thank you very much for your passionate.
Yes, please shut me up because I'll fucking keep going.
I know. Thank you, Frank. Rain, you're up next. Take it.
I've got two thoughts. So this ties into the sixth tenet, which is people are fallible and all that. Yes. And I was thinking with because your body is subject to your own will alone, you must acknowledge that you are fully responsible for your actions. And so as Satanists, we cannot say that what we do is because of something higher above us influencing us or blaming our actions on others. And I really believe in having an internal locus of control. And one of the things that tends to piss me off is when people blame their actions on circumstances and people and characters outside themselves. And I think that understanding that our body is our own will and what we do with that and how we act, we have to understand that our actions are basically our own will too.
Yeah, and that comes with accepting the consequences.
Whatever happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we when we talk about the tenets, we always remind ourselves that they're connected, right? We act while we're being, subject to our own will. We're thinking about compassion and empathy and striving for these ideals that we hope to embody on a good day.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So of course, we have to keep all those things in mind. Absolutely. All the choices that we make, we can take a big, bold stance about, nope, it's my fucking body and I'm going to do what I want because this is what I want and I'm in control. But of course, compassion maybe makes us think of how will this impact others? And that's all part of our decision-making process. Cool. Yeah. Good reminder for sure. Thank you, Rain. Dan, go ahead.
Just to circle back to the vaccine mandates.
Sure.
When I consider the third tenet, the whole vaccine issue becomes a gray area pretty fast for me.
Yeah.
But one thing to consider is that if you're walking around spreading a deadly virus, aren't you in some ways or in some sense violating other people's bodily autonomy by unnecessarily spreading a serious illness to others?
Well, Dan, if you don't want to take the risk, you can just stay in your house the whole time and never go outside. Right? Isn't that the other option, right? Which in the most literal sense is true, but of course everybody would like to be free to just live a life.
Right. And one thing to keep in mind also is when we're talking about vaccine mandates, we're not talking about folks being physically restrained and forcibly jabbed with a vaccine against their will.
Right.
I think something like that would surely be a violation of the third tenet, but that's not what's happening. When we're talking about vaccine mandates, we're talking about things like being vaccinated as a condition of working at particular workplaces. And I'm not sure if something like that is necessarily a violation of the third tenet, because people still retain at some level the right not to get vaccinated. But at the same time, a business owner should have the right to choose not to employ that particular person at their particular place of business if they don't wish to.
Yes. It's interesting. Yeah, go ahead. Don't let me cut you off.
So while I understand the opposing side of this issue, when I read the third tenet, I just don't necessarily interpret it as an obligation for a business owner to employ someone at their place of business.
Right. Yeah. I often find myself, not just related to this topic at all, but generally, whenever there's something popping off in the news or whatever, if it's relatable, I do tend to remind myself of the business owner, the entrepreneur. It's easy, especially when it's a big business, right? If we're thinking of these giant corporations, you name which one. It's easy for us as the everyman to just sort of, rage against the machine. These fucking big businesses, these fucking rich people, they're like our enemy. But in most of these cases, who's the most valuable company in the world? Is it still Apple? It might be Apple. If it's not Apple, they're in the top 2 or 3, right? Apple started in a dude's garage. It started from $1, in a dude's garage, tinkering, and now here we are, and we have Apple. And so somewhere along the way, we have to subjectively, everybody's a little different, we subjectively draw our own threshold where it stops being a person and when it starts being the enemy or the big thing that is completely dehumanized. And we want to force corporations to do the things that we want them to do. And we do tend to forget that those choices still do affect human beings. Maybe those human beings' feelings don't count as much as ours because they have a lot of money. That's an attitude that I see thrown around a lot. The anti-billionaire, anti-millionaire, all of these viewpoints. That's not a real fucking person. Fuck him. He's rich. Nobody should be that rich. And I get where that comes from. But if it was my kid, if it was Darwin who just rolled in here and he started a fucking widget factory in his bedroom, and before you know it, he was wildly successful, I would still think he's Darwin. And I would still value his ability to make these choices and not want to force things on him. I'm high, and so I'm ranting, but forgive me, guys. I don't even know how I got here. Emerson, you're next.
I'm really enjoying hearing everyone's different opinions here. I kind of live in a bubble down here in the South. My wife and I don't get out much, partly due to COVID, partly just because we don't like being around fucking people anyways. But
Yeah.
I'm kind of more like a devil's advocate type of person where I enjoy hearing other people's opinions. It really like helps me kind of get a better view on things. But just in general, my parents were very conservative growing up. I think a lot of people's were, not really so much religiously, but politically. A lot of my issues are with politics. It's so hard to be informed on things because everything's so politicized nowadays. When I was growing up, it seemed like there's such a divide now between certain things that just seemed like when I was younger in the 90s, growing up, or even the early 2000s, it was just more simple. Like, it wasn't as extreme as far as like getting a vaccine or, like how you vote for this person or what policies a company is deciding to follow up on. Yep. And it's, for me personally, it's so hard to make a decision because of like what you're talking about, the social pressures from everybody, from the internet, from media, from people you work with or people in your own family.
Yeah.
That could have a completely different opinion on something. And it's just hard to even make an informed opinion on some of these things because there's so many different variables. But, I appreciate the Tenet itself just because for face value is that, you yourself is kind of like, it's, you need to definitely make decisions on what you think is best based off other things. But hearing everyone's different opinions, it's good because it definitely opens you up to possibilities you probably didn't even think of in the first place. Like when Francesca was talking about her heart issue, I didn't even think about that, which is a very valid point because, like she's correct, nobody talks about that. So it's just wild because a lot of people it's interesting to me to hear people that are so concrete in their ideas and their beliefs on how they think on something. But for me, it's like, I don't know. I'm sure there's people out there that are just like confused as fuck and they don't even know what to think.
Oh,
and that's
I think that's a ton of people. I think that is a ton of people.
And
they have every right to feel that way.
Yeah. So like, I do think that most people have like the general public's interest at like good heart. They want to do the right thing. And sometimes you might be doing something that isn't good for someone, but you might not know that. But it's just crazy how critical people can be. It's like, there isn't
well,
a lot
look,
of
you heard Frankie's story about, the vaccine and her heart and everything. And the short version of that, and Frankie, correct me if I'm wrong here, but if you just wanted to erase all the nuance, Frankie's stance, no vaccine mandate.
Well, that is, I will correct you, no vaccine mandates for COVID.
Right, for COVID, yes.
Because it's brand new.
Yeah. And so if you cut it down to that and you post that on social media, what's going to happen to Frankie?
I'm going to be burned at the stake.
Yeah. They're coming for Frankie. And they're going to assume a lot of things. And they're going to just, look, immediately Frankie is going to be an anti-vaxxer. Frankie's going to be a Trumpster. Frankie's going to be all these things, you know what I mean? Based on this little sliver of one person's experience in the world that has informed her decision and her feelings, all of this. We don't have all this nuance. Like we have this. We have the chance to have a platform where we can get people with different life experiences to come and talk about them like this. But how representative is this of everyday experience. It's not. You don't normally get 10 or 20 or 30 people talking about an issue in a long form, respectful way like this. And it's a shame. I mean, wouldn't it be great if everybody did, if everybody could relate, like, oh, now I understand why Frankie says this or has this stance or whatever, because there are people behind these opinions. But
I did just want to say that I really appreciate that everyone here is giving their opinions.
Yeah.
Because it's very helpful, and I like it, and I just want to say thanks to everybody, because I didn't really know what to expect when I came to the Zoom, but
yeah,
it's great.
Cool. Thank you, Emerson. Yeah, I think it's great. I love when we do these things, and it's not always on these roundtables, but we get into little chats about shit here and there. Go ahead, Rob. You're up. You gonna be fired up?
Well, usually. It's really interesting when we think about, one's body is inviolable, subject to one's will alone, because it does go to the workplace in the sense of, think about like Amazon workers in a warehouse who are like pushed to the limits. They're pissing in bottles because they're not given enough time to maintain the dignity of a bathroom break. That's in order to walk to the bathroom and relieve themselves. And so there's all those stories about totally overworked Amazon workers. And we say, well, one's body is inviolable, subject to one's will alone. So if you don't like the job, you could always quit. But then, what happens when there's, one of the few jobs in town? I think about the Tyson meatpacking factory up there that was like jam-packed with people in the middle of COVID who are like, processing all the meat. And then there's like a lot of people who are like undocumented workers, and they're in there and they don't really have the power to be like, well, I'm not comfortable with this. Well,
of course,
if you're not comfortable with this, you got to go. Where are you going to go? Oh, well, then there's no other, you're already kind of working under the radar. So there's all these different options. Ironically, that same company is like, well, our people who work in the office, the white collar folks, we're working at home. And so, you could respect your own autonomy. You could do. And so there's like this dichotomy of privilege that's really kind of like frustrating when we think about what people have to do as part of their job that makes them more vulnerable to make their body more vulnerable to be put in harm's way, whether exposure to COVID, even, like when I pick up fries from Five Guys, because my wife is, that's the only fries my wife can eat. I go there and it's just jam packed full of guys who are all just there, and they're, there's so much like, in the height of COVID, you got to be outside, and then they bring it to the door, and there's all this stuff. But then the people that are actually working and producing, that are putting in the sweat and labor, they're out there for the vulnerability, but the consumer is protected. And there's that dichotomy there. That's totally, that goes to the empathy, where people have to like maybe question things where, how your own comfort, are you also making somebody else go into danger?
Yeah, of course. There's always about these pressures, that inform our decisions. We don't always get to make, it feels like I hardly ever get to make a decision just based on nothing other than how happy is this going to make me? Wouldn't that be nice? Like if that's the only criteria in your decision making. Well, no, of course not. It's going to affect other people. It's going to affect my livelihood. It's going to, tonight, like this is great, right? Like I enjoy doing this with you guys, and I think it's valuable that we get to do this. But I did not fucking feel like it. I didn't. I had a long day today. I wasn't in a great mood. And if it was just up to me, I would have fucking went to bed. Because I was like, I'm over this fucking day and fuck this day. But I can't do that. I can't, because I told everybody we were doing this tonight. Some of you might have been excited to do it. And if I don't record the podcast, everybody's going to say, this fucker doesn't even make a podcast anymore. And so fuck him. And so here we are. Now we're 2 hours into it and I feel good about it. And it was nice. But 40 minutes before we started it, I didn't want to do it. You know, I just wanted to go to bed. So yeah, of course, our decision making isn't as pure and simple as we wish it were. We're affected by so many different realities. I feel you, Rob. Thank you for that. And I think we've done a pretty decent job talking about this tenet tonight. What do we think?
I could definitely say a lot more, but.
Oh, I'm sure you could, Frank. All right, guys. That's where I'll cut this episode. Of course, our discussion was a good bit longer than this. And if you're interested in taking part in something like this, it's open to all members of Satanic Delco. So if you've got a moment, please consider visiting the website at hailsatanpodcast.com. Stay safe out there, and hail Satan.
Robin, she didn't have the evil free service.